Hi everyone, I'm Coach Nate Law and I'm here to talk to you today about what it was like buying $1 million law firm at age 30. After more than a decade of being in the business of law, I can tell you that my career has not gone the way I thought it would. It has taken all kinds of tacks and turns, but for the most part, the surprises have been good ones. One of the biggest surprises that I had was having the opportunity, after just practicing law for just a few years, to be able to buy out a partner of a small firm who had been in business for over 30 years. This was an incredible opportunity, and I had the opportunity to do it with a partner. So two of us buying out the last remaining shareholder of a small firm that had been in our community for, like I said, over 30 years. And this was an opportunity that not a lot of people have, so I want to share some of that with you. So I own a small to mid-sized law firm, what would be considered that in my market, of about 6 lawyers, 5 or so staff, and some contractors that help out. And it makes about a top line or gross revenue of about $1 million a year, which sounds great. I'm a $1 million firm. That's really just the gross amount. Like I said, my actual salary or income is not $1 million. That's not what I make per year. That's kind of the top line. But I make a good lawyer's salary on average. When I first came out of law school, I could not find a job. It actually took me about 7 months before I finally settled into something that worked for me, that was just kind of my first lawyer job. So fast forward 2.5 years or so, I switched to a different firm that I knew I would like the culture. It was a total lateral move. Didn't do anything for me in terms of money, but in terms of just career and kind of possible advancement. That's what I was looking for. What I didn't know is that a mere 6 months to a year later, I would be in the process of being offered to kind of take over that firm along with another person. And that was something that, the timing just really worked out. So in terms of how I got into this position to be able to do this, really, I think it was just that first step of knowing, where to put yourself and position yourself. Like I said, I didn't know I was putting myself necessarily in a position of an ownership position, but I knew that at this firm I would have more of a possible advancement in the future and, more opportunity to kind of influence where the firm was going. And so one way that I think this happened was just being intentional about your goals and your own advancement in your career. And certainly the next part of that was just being in the right place at the right time, because this was a firm where there was an owner who was looking to step down and to sell their business, but to also be invested in keeping the business going. I also want to talk to you about 3 hardships that I faced through this process, how I overcame those, and what I can give to you that I learned from that. Remember to like and subscribe to this video, and also check out coachlaw.biz for more info on me. So when I was given the opportunity to step into an ownership and leadership role of this firm, the first thing that came to my mind was, wow, that is like a dream come true. But very quickly that was followed by a lot of concern, or looking at all the different ways this could go wrong. First of all, I didn't want to go into any more debt. I still had some student loans at that point. I'd been working hard for the first few years of my career to try to pay off all of my student loans. I'd become very risk averse. I was married, had my first child, and I wanted to be able to be in a position to provide and not be worried about fluctuations of income in a business. So the first difficulty or challenge that I kind of ran into was how to structure this deal. I mean, this was a big business deal, bigger than anything I had ever dealt with, personally, because this was a business that, several employees relied on at that time. It was a business that, $1 million or so a year ran through it. That's a lot to manage, going from never owning a business to doing that. Thankfully, the prior owner, the seller, was very invested in us and very invested in keeping the firm going, and saw that, we needed to have some security as well. And so what he did is he essentially, what I call, floated the loan. And so we didn't have to get a separate loan and just pay him out a lump sum immediately. We said, okay, we're going to pay you back. We agreed on an amount, which was, loosely based on we looked at the past 3 to 5 years of the books of the business and looked at the gross and net incomes. And we kind of based it on about 4 years or so of net profit from the business was about what the purchase price ended up being. So that's one way you can go back and look. For different types of businesses and certainly different types of law firms, that might look a little bit different, but that was kind of the first step. The next step was agreeing on an interest amount, because he was going to be the one basically floating this loan and saying, okay, you don't have to pay me out initially, you're going to pay me out of the income and the net income from the firm You're going to pay me a monthly amount every month. And that was going to be over a period of 8 years. And so that seemed like a lot at the time. Looking back now that that's over, doesn't seem like that bad. Thankfully, what this really did, the way we structured it, was that the prior owner or the seller really was invested in taking on a mentorship role with us, particularly over the first 2 to 4 years after, we officially became the owner. Because if the business didn't succeed, he knew there was a risk that he might not get paid if everything just went under. So the next big challenge of buying this law firm at age 30 and buying into something that already existed was making changes. This was the biggest in particular on the tech side, because the prior owner had been kind of just getting by on whatever worked tech-wise for the last decade, which at this point is just not going to work for how speedily and quickly tech changes. And so that was a big deal. And that, took some iteration over about 2 years to really get to a point where we were, what I would say is just kind of a modern law firm where you would be starting out, but we had to kind of switch out processes, switch out programs that were already in existence instead of just starting from scratch. So in some ways, it was more of a challenge than just starting from scratch because you had to switch over a lot of things. And that definitely came with its own headaches. The second thing in terms of the changes that really had to take place was with personnel. We had a negative situation where, the prior owner hadn't really dealt with a particular person, who was causing a lot of kind of just toxic drama and not really doing their work, and had just kind of let a lot of things go. And just kind of over time that had created a negative situation. So we had to make a decision right away to deal with it differently. And if we didn't get a positive response, we had to have that decision to say, okay, this is how we need to let this person go. Got to make them free to do something they actually want to be doing, because they don't seem to want to be doing anything good here. And so that was a hard thing to do, especially right off the bat. But, we just needed to start off with that clarity and making sure that people knew what was appropriate, what was expected, and what the results would be. So that was on the negative side. And then on the positive side, it was a challenge trying to get people on board, with kind of a new vision and a vision for growth out of a firm where, like I said, for the past, decade or so, there hadn't really been new ideas towards growth. It had been more just kind of staying at about the same level, just kind of getting by with, the cheapest ways of doing things, the, easiest ways of doing things, but not really looking forward to kind of any future goals. In my case, there were 2 people that have been there over 20 years longer than I have. And suddenly I was their boss and had to get them to be on the same page with me, and I had to listen to them and figure out, what their concerns were, what their real goals and desires were, and see how this all meshed. And so that was a tough thing, but in the end, it's been a really rewarding thing, because now it's been over 7 years where we've been on the same page and been able to move forward and do some great things. So the next kind of stage in my ownership of the firm came about 5 years after the initial purchase. So at this point, the prior owner had kind of transitioned mostly out of their mentorship role. We were rolling along, but my partner, my confidant, my right-hand man, or maybe I was his right-hand man, we were 50-50 owners. He had to move out of state for his family. And so he said, I gotta get bought out. And that was the hardest thing, I think. But also what made it easy in a practical way was that from the very beginning, we had decided, and every year we had updated our plan for if one of us had to leave for any reason, if one of us died, if one of us couldn't practice law anymore, he just was not interested. If one of us, for whatever reason, we had a plan for what that would look like, and we made sure that it would work for the other person as well as for the person leaving, and that it would allow the firm to continue. And after my partner left, the challenges that I found were that I didn't have somebody else closely working with me in the day-to-day who was kind of a confidant and who was essentially, not only my sounding board, but my accountability partner, and someone who was looking out for all the same warning signs or dangers that I was, and who was motivated and excited about the business as I was. So I started to feel really alone, and that was a hard time because I also had to readjust, which admin things I was doing, or, which kind of personnel, HR, leadership, roles that we had. We had to change all of that. And so that was a big challenge. And one of the big challenges that I learned, or one of the big things that I took away from that, was that I need to, look at my role a lot differently. I need to look at all of the hats I wear and figure out who the best person is to do all of these things. And so in the end, it was really helpful to be able to do that. And I think that is where the business has really grown a lot since then, but it was very hard and it was a struggle to overcome. So overall, my experience was, bought the law firm at age 30. And then by age 37, I paid it off a year early, bought out both the prior owner who we originally bought it from and my new partner's interest, and was able to have a debt-free firm. And so that's been such a blessing and an exciting thing going forward, because now I can really pour into the firm and reinvest in the firm's future. If you've ever taken over a law firm or purchased one or stepped into a leadership role into an existing law firm and had any of these same struggles, I would love to hear from you. Leave me a note in the comments, because this is something that I think just doesn't get talked about enough. I appreciate you being here. Please like and subscribe for more encouragement and tips on how to be the best possible law firm owner. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.